Friday, October 19th, 2018, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. A lot going on this morning in the markets and overall geopolitically. I like to focus on the technical picture in the Dow. It looks like we're forming a massive bear flag. A few days ago on Wednesday, the market was rallying very strongly. It looked like the bottom was in, but I wasn't convinced, and it looks like, yeah, this flag is still forming. I'll talk about my objective in the short term, where we could go in the stock market, especially the Dow. I'll look at Italy. Crisis there seems to be flaring up again. I think ECB President Mario Draghi yesterday had some harsh words for Italy. And I'll look at Sweden as well. Some of my viewers have asked what will happen to Sweden if interest rates start spiking. And I'll touch upon that on Sweden. Sweden, of course, is part of the European Union, but like the UK, has its own currency, the Swedish krona. So I'll look at Swedish interest rates, Swedish 10-year yield, and the Swedish debt as well. And I want to talk a little bit about the situation as it relates to what's happening with Saudi Arabia and the death of this journalist Jamal Khashoggi, and how it could impact things, because it's quite important, and I think it could be used as an excuse for related to the petrodollar, and that's very important. And the eventual death of the petrodollar, I think, is inevitable. Does that mean that the dollar is going to collapse? No. When the petrodollar was created in the 70s, in the mid-70s, the dollar didn't become the reserve currency or rise massively right away. It actually had a really difficult time, and almost people were talking about the dollar imploding in the late 70s, early 80s as gold rose. So things are not as clear-cut, but it could have a large impact on what reserve currency other countries use, and we're seeing that happen already, and this could accelerate that. Before, of course, going into these subjects, I'll look at what the markets are doing this morning. So let's have a look here. Yesterday, of course, the Dow finished down 327 points, or 1.27%. It was down as much as around 450 during the day. It did rebound a bit. S&P finished down 40, or down 1.4%, and the NASDAQ composite finished down 157, or 2%. So it wasn't a great day for the stock market. So we start with gold as usual. Right now, gold did fairly well yesterday. It held up well. Traded up to 1230. Right now it's 1226, pretty much unchanged. The range has been 1223 to 1229.70, so still a bit of resistance there around 1230. After that, the really key level I would say is 1236. If we break through that, it's very positive. Silver yesterday was not doing very well in the morning, and I was a bit concerned that that would bring the whole precious metals complex down, but it didn't. Silver this morning is up 4 at 1460, up a quarter of a percent. The Dow right now is up 52, 25,428. It has been up as much as 125, so a little firmer. Doesn't take away from what I'm going to talk about, technically in a minute. S&P up 6 points, or 0.2%, 2775. The NASDAQ 100 futures up 34, or 0.5%. Currency-wise, we've got cable at 130.18, unchanged, so not much going on there. The euro is at 114.45. Down 7 pips, so fairly steady as well. Dollar's a little stronger against the yen, 112.44, up a quarter of a percent. The dollar is actually a little weaker against the yuan, 693.70, but marginally though. Crude oil is up slightly. WTI is at 68.90, up 1/4%, and the Brent crude is up 1/3% at 79.20. Italy, well, the 10-year yield, let's look at the US 10-year yield, is at 318. So that, or 317 right now, down about 1 basis point. So the big thing today, in my opinion, early on is this Italian situation. We've made a new high here for the year for the last 52 weeks. The 10-year yield in Italy is 376. The the German yield right now is at 40, the 10 years. So we have a 336 spread, BTP a Bund spread, 336. I mean, this is quite amazing. It's quite a wide spread. It's a crisis-like spread. So we need to keep a close eye on Italy. So 336. I mean, a few weeks ago we're talking about how it's going to break 300, and now we're at 336. So how are the European markets doing? Well, the Italian stock market is down about 191, or down 1%. The other markets haven't really felt, the brunt of this crisis so far. In terms of other countries, their yields, countries like in the Mediterranean, like Spain and Portugal, we've got Spain up 7 basis points, the 10-year yield, even though it's still fairly low at 179, and Portugal is up 6 basis points, and it's at 208. So really need to keep a close eye on Italy. Italy is one of the biggest debtor nations in the world, and this could snowball. So now let's look at the Dow first, and the technical picture, and why I think we could be due for quite a big drop soon to complete a bear flag. It's always difficult to tell when that will happen. If it's today or next week or maybe late next week. But as you can see here, there's the bear flag. The flagpole is the down day we had on the 10th of October. I think it was the 832 point drop. And then we dropped further the next day, 400 odd points. And then we've been consolidating here, forming this flag. And you can see that on the 16th, a lot of people thought, oh, the bottom is in. We're going to go to make new highs. But no, we've come back. And we could still stay within this flag that's forming. The flagpole, of course, is the drop on the 10th. And then when we break the bottom of the flag here, which today is around just above 25,000, then we could see another flagpole form to the downside, and would be the same, approximately the same size as the original flag there. And in my opinion, I haven't measured it, exactly, but looking at it visually just like this, it looks like we could go to 24,000, and that would make sense, because that was the low from late June. That was since then, the market had been rising quite nicely, and it could be a next test on the downside. So that's where I think we could be going. Is that a definite? No, but markets are, in my opinion, if you're going to speculate, you need to use probability and then act upon it. It could be wrong that, this might not be a flag and we could keep going higher. But in my opinion, if I was going to put a trade on, buy some put options or a short ETF, I would be doing it on the downside to bet on that 24,000. Am I advising you to do that? No, but I'm just trying to tell you what I think is happening right now. And why is it happening? Well, it's just happening. Some people give a lot of reasons why, but I think the markets are just overdone. And as I said earlier, don't fight the Fed. They're not only raising rates, they're selling 600 billion in treasuries this year off their balance sheet. And central banks sell stuff. They're actually taking money out of the economy. What am I going to look at now? Oh, Sweden. Yeah, one of the viewers asked me, based in Sweden, what about Sweden? Would Sweden suffer from rising interest rates in the US? Yes, partly, I would say, but I would say that Sweden as well, even though it's not part of the Eurozone, and it is part of the EU though, but it has its own currency, the krona, Swedish krona, it is pegging itself more to the euro, and euro rates, German rates are a lot lower, and so Swedish rates could go higher, but they're from much lower levels. For example, a story here from February this year, it says Sweden keeps record low interest rates. So Sweden's central bank has a negative interest rate, right? So they're following the EU or ECB, how can I say, policy. And Sweden as well has a very low public or government debt. I think it's just about 40%. So compared to the US or Italy, fiscally, the Swedish government is very responsible. And so where are the Swedish rates? Well, the Swedish 10-year yield right now, government bond yield, is at 64 basis points. So it's a bit higher than the German one, but not significantly. The German one is 40 basis points. So the Swedish 10-year yield is 64. So it looks like the Swedish central bank and the Swedish establishment, financial establishment, is just pegging along with Europe. And why do they do that? Well, because if they, they allowed Swedish rates to trade to a normal level, it would strengthen their currency massively, especially with the fact that they don't have that much debt. Let's have a look at the euro and the Swedish krona to see how the krona is doing against the currency that it's basically pegging itself against, or setting its policy against the Swedish central bank or the Riksbank. You can see that prior to the crisis of 08, the euro stayed between 9 and 9.5 kronas, and right after the crisis, or during the crisis, euro rose so much, and then though the euro turned around and dropped massively with the European government bond crisis, the PIGS, the crisis, the debt crisis, and the krona was too strong for the Riksbank. It got down, the euro got down to below 8.5 in 2012. And ever since then, it looks like the Riksbank policy has been one to basically debase their currency as much as possible against the euro. So that in of itself is not a good thing for the purchasing power of the krona. Sweden, even though it has low government debt, low rates, don't be fooled. The krona is not doing well either, and it would be affected by higher rates in the US and in Europe. What about Saudi Arabia and what's happening there in relation to the journalist Jamal Khashoggi? Well, I think it could be an excuse for throwing Saudi Arabia under the bus. What do I mean by that? Well, many of you might remember or might know about an interview that General Wesley Clark had on TV. I'm not sure what channel it was. It was like a cable channel. And in that interview, he mentioned how he was called up to the Pentagon right after 9/11, and he spoke with some of his friends, general friends, and they told him, you know, we're going to invade Iraq. And he said, why? And he said, they weren't involved in 9/11. And they said, well, you know, if you have a hammer, we don't really know who did it. If you have a hammer, you use it. But and then the guy told him, but it gets worse. And he said, what? He said, well, we're not only going to invade Iraq, we're going to invade 7 other countries, and one of them is going to be Saudi Arabia at the end. And that's how, you know, we could see a petrodollar come into jeopardy, because Saudi Arabia is key to the petrodollar. It was with the Saudis that Henry Kissinger negotiated the deal for them to sell their oil in dollars, and in exchange the U.S. would provide you know, security to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But if that you know, is abandoned, things are up in the air, and it could affect the markets massively, the financial markets. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, share it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can also follow me on Steemit, DTube, and on Twitter. I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.